Hello, everyone, and welcome to Red Alert Diaries with Tanya E. Hood. I am Tanya E. Hood, a wife, a mother, and an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, it simply means that I've worn a lot of different hats in my life that have helped me develop a full range of strategies and actionable steps that I've used to help my clients make a strategic impact, both personally and professionally. Red Alert Diaries is based on the life lessons from my premier book, Red Alert, Is He the One? The pocket guide to finding the love of your life. This shares information about how to grow and develop through various things. And if you've read my book, then you already know that I got married at 21. And after 11 years of marriage, I found myself going through a divorce, having to raise my two sons alone. To reset my life and survive my divorce, I took the time I needed to get to know me better, which allowed me to open up to new love again, which proves there is life after divorce. Today, on this interactive session, we are going to have a conversation about how to protect your children from the emotional damage that divorce can have on them. We have today joining us to give you insight on how to create a shield for your children, create a joint venture with your ex, and empower yourself to change the environment. Dr. Erica Ellis joins us to give us this insight. She is a licensed psychologist, an author, a survivor as a child of divorce herself, as well as a divorce coach. So we invite you to get pen and paper. We want you to take this time now because as we go through this presentation, you are going to gain insight about how to help you make the strategic changes that you need in your life. And as an individual that has gone through divorce, I am also a person that has tried to make certain that I walk through that as well and invite others that know what it's like to give you insight. So I hope you're ready. Dr. Erica, thank you so much for joining us today, giving us some insight about how to get through this thing.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I'm so excited to be here with you. I appreciate that introduction, and I'm really looking forward to being able to share some really, really important things with your listeners that I'm hoping will be life-changing for them. So I would love to start by sharing a little bit about my personal story and how I got to this place in my life with this passion project for helping parents protect their kids from emotional damage. So I grew up in a pretty normal family, two parents. I had an older brother, and life was pretty good till about the time that I turned 16. And that's when we found out that my dad was having an affair, and he asked my mom for a divorce after 24 years of marriage. And as I'm sure many of you can relate to, she was absolutely devastated, blown away, rejected, terrified, the whole range of emotions. And my dad, was probably overwhelmed with guilt for all the pain that he was causing myself, my brother, and my mom. So my brother had already left for college, and my mom and I were left home together. And I was really close with her. And this became kind of a double-edged sword because she shared everything with me. I knew every detail of their legal battles. I knew everything about this woman who my dad was having an affair with because my mom happened to know her. I was her confidant, her friend, her therapist. And while on the one hand, that felt incredibly flattering to me, it was so overwhelming. I was a 16-year-old kid. I had no idea how to help her. And it took a toll on me. It took a huge toll on me. And my parents, as well-meaning and as loving as they were so derailed by the painful emotions of this divorce that they made so many mistakes. I was used as a messenger. I was asked to keep secrets. I was told things that I shouldn't know. And, about 6 months into their divorce, I started to develop weird physical symptoms. I started having dizziness and lightheadedness, and they dragged me to doctors, neurologists, CAT scans, MRIs. And nobody ever said my parents or the doctors never said, hey, we're going through this difficult time. Maybe that's playing some part of this. And I look back now at that as a psychologist, and it's kind of horrifying. But it's also reflective that my parents weren't quite there in terms of thinking about all this stuff. They were so caught up in their own issues and in their own pain that it was hard for them to really do what I needed and to really take care of me in the way that I needed to be taken care of. And, I tell a story that's so reflective of some of the challenges that I had as a kid. My dad used to take me for visits on Saturdays. He dropped me off at the house, and he said, your mom's not home. I really need to use the bathroom. Could you let me in? I'm like, no, Dad, I'm sworn to the fact that you are not allowed in the house. She'd kill me. He's like, she's not home. She'll never know. So I'm like, okay. I didn't want him to be mad at me. Obviously, I didn't want my mom to be mad at me either. But as a good 16-year-old, I figured I could get away with this. My dad goes into the house. He uses the bathroom. He leaves. I'm figuring I'm all good. My mom comes home. She asks me the question she always asks me when the visits are over. And she said, did you let your dad into the house? And of course I said, no, Mom, of course not. I know I'm not allowed to. And I figured the whole story is done. About half an hour later, she comes running down. You let your dad into the house. I'm like, what are you talking about? I still thought I could lie my way out of it. She said, he went into my bathroom and he left the toilet seat up. This is my favorite toilet seat incident story. And now it's kind of funny, but it really wasn't funny then. It was so symbolic of how I was caught in the middle of my parents. And no matter what I chose to do, somebody was going to end up being disappointed and angry with me. And this went on for years. I went away to college, and honestly, I give my mom credit because by this point I had pretty much internalized my role as being her caretaker. And I thought I couldn't leave, that she needed me. I couldn't abandon her by going away to college. She pushed me to go. But honestly, every time I came home on a vacation or on a break, there was an issue. Whose house was I going to go to first? How many hours was I going to spend with my dad? Whose house would I sleep at? It was a constant being torn back and forth from my parents. When my son got married, when I got married, there was a big issue about who's going to walk me down the aisle, whose names were going to be on the invitation. This was 10 years after my parents got divorced, and literally 20 years after my parents got divorced. And I had my son. In my post 32-hour labor stupor, I was more worried about my mom having to be in the same room as my dad than I was about sharing this most wonderful moment of my life with both of my parents. And I literally called my dad and I asked him not to come.
Dr. Erica, can I pause? Because your story is so reflective of so many individuals that are walking through this same turmoil. You just walked through a 20-year journey after your parents got divorced that you were still having to deal with. And there are a lot of individuals that I know that are looking at this today that have been married for 24 years, like your parents, who end up letting the relationship go. And in some of their minds, they're thinking, well, my children are old enough. We can walk through this. It will be okay. But that is not true. That is not the experience. And then what you shared, that was just eye-opening to me. So I want to also pause because we have several people that are here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for this discussion. This is an interactive conversation, and we invite you along the way to ask your comments, put your information in the chat box so that Dr. Erica can see that. But these points that you just shared, having that conversation about, I'm supposed to have a joyous moment, giving birth to my child, but I'm still being traumatized by what happened when my parents got divorced years ago, because in all this time, they still have not yet learned how to deal with one another and because you were taught throughout the chaos that immediately followed the divorce that you had to protect them.
Right.
That's a lot. So I want to ask, is it okay if we start giving some of your first points, because you have some phenomenal things. And this story, I know, feeds into all those pieces because you learned by going through it as a child, even though you were a teenager, still a child having to walk through that experience. I thank you for taking the time to learn how to create a shield. So can you walk us through what that looks like?
Absolutely. And because of what I went through, that's my passion, to prevent other people from having to go through the same things I did. So 20, 30 years later, they're not still struggling. So I created what I call a 7-step protect system. And that system focuses on the 3 major relationships in your life: your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your kids, with your ex, and your relationship with your kids. And I want to start with you in terms of creating this shield, because you're the foundation. And if you crumble, everything underneath you crumbles as well. And it's kind of like when you're on the plane and they give you the safety spiel and they say, if the cabin pressure gets affected, the air masks are going to come down, put it on you first. And that's what this first step is about. It's taking care of you. And the first step is proclaiming your power and responsibility, because you have the power to make things better for your kids. You can't sit and stay involved in blaming your ex, because you will be waiting forever for them to change. You need to be able to look at yourself and say, what do I have the power to do? What do I have the power to change? And I talk about a 4-step oath process. And I want each of you to take this personal oath. It's owning what's in your power. It's accepting what's not in your power. It's taking charge of what you can, and it's walking forward and starting to heal. So I ask each of you to take that personal oath and empower yourself to believe that there's things that you can do to make your life better and your kids' life better. The second step in the protect system is the R. And that's rising above your divorce-related emotions. I know that divorce is painful. I know that there are a whole variety of feelings that every one of you who has gone through a divorce is going to feel. And that's absolutely normal. But you can't allow those emotions to take control of you. You have to learn to deal with them and manage them and move past them. And I talk about a 5-step process that I call the 5 A's of rising above your divorce-related emotions. You have to acknowledge the feelings and the impact that they're having on you. You can't be able to say, angry? I'm not angry. You have to honestly look at how you're snapping at your kids, how you're fighting with your friends, how you're running into conflicts at work. Acknowledge how those emotions are playing out. The second A is is assessing the underlying feelings. Anger is the easy one, but you need to look at the more painful: rejection, betrayal, fear, sadness, depression. And sometimes people are afraid to look at that because they feel like, oh my God, if I let the floodgates open, I'm going to drown. But honestly, that's going to be what allows you to heal, is letting those feelings in and acknowledging them and dealing with them. And then you need to admit the role that you might have played in your marriage ending. My mom blamed everything on my dad because he had an affair. But in all honesty, there were things that she did, because affairs don't happen in a vacuum. There's things that she did. Her life was totally focused on the kids. My dad said she stopped listening and paying attention. So you need to admit the part that you play. And then you need to accept your humanity and your ex's humanity and the mistakes that both of you might have made, because that's what's going to allow you to move into the healing and the forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. Holding on to those feelings are poison. They're toxic. They will impact you for the rest of your life and your kids' lives if you don't figure out how to get to that fifth place of arising above those emotions.
Dr. Erica, that is powerful. And oftentimes we don't pay enough attention to the role that both individuals play. It takes two people to create a marriage, and it also takes two to let it go.
Absolutely.
We have some wonderful individuals from the group that have joined us. We welcome you. Turn on your cameras, say hi to Dr. Erica, and take this moment to ask her some questions that you may have along the way. We are also streaming live in the group, and we ask those in the group to join us here on the Zoom so that you can get your questions asked. So, hey, Jocelyn, thank you for coming. It's good to see you.
Welcome.
It's good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And for those others that are here in the Zoom, this is an interactive session. This is where we come to get healed and get whole, because we don't usually have conversations like this, and we need to. I really wish I knew a little bit more, because I went through the trials of trying to help my children not be my confidant like you went through with your parents, so that they wouldn't have to experience the traumatizing moments. I know they're going to need therapy. It just is what it is. But hopefully not so much drama, because what I did do to help me through my process as a mom going through that with children, because my children at the time were 4 and 10. So they were younger and I did not have to deal so much. But when parents have older children, sometimes we think because they're older, they're better equipped. Because as my children got older, when my oldest was 14, I was thinking, you're 14 years old. We were doing the co-parenting thing sort of back and forth. And so he started getting stuck in between. Not that I was giving him a lot of overload from our divorce, but his father, because I was beginning to move forward. I was still single, hadn't met anybody, didn't want to be with anybody, wasn't trying to do this thing called marriage again. But I was a single woman that could date. We should not have a problem dating, but the ex that decided to leave decides that they want to still try to control your relationship and use your children as tools to give them insight. We have to stop letting that happen. But we also have to empower our children to get through the process. So Jocelyn, are there any questions you would like to ask? Because I know Dr. Erica is going to give us some insight about how to do this joint venture with our ex, because I did not do that well.
Yep, I'm about to move into that unless Jocelyn has a question.
Yes, they are in their 20s and we still cannot co-parent. You still got to do the co-parenting as long as they are alive.
Absolutely.
So Jocelyn.
No, I don't have a question. I'm just excited to learn and use some new tools. So I've been divorced for a few years, but at first it was a disaster. But today is actually my ex-husband's birthday, and I was so excited to call him and tell him happy birthday. I had the kids call him and tell him happy birthday, and now it's a different journey. So
that's awesome.
You're always going on something different. It's going along in a different place as the kids grow. So I'm here to learn more, because our oldest is 11. So as he gets older, it's going to be more
All
things.
Right. Well, hopefully there's going to be some good stuff for you coming up. So
indeed. So,
all right, Tanya, we're ready to go to the next slide, because we're going to go to the third step in this protect system, and that's overhauling your co-parenting relationship. And I tell parents that the co-parenting relationship is probably one of the most complicated of all relationships. But you know what? We could go to the next one, Tanya. You do not have to be best friends with your ex. You don't even have to be friends. But you do need to figure out how to create what I believe is the best kind of relationship. And that's a business relationship, because you have the joint venture of raising your kids, like Tanya just said, for the rest of your life. And we all have colleagues that we work with that we don't particularly like, that we don't particularly get along with, but we go to work every day and we figure out how to get the work done. And I talk about the KFCs of this business relationship. I thought about calling it the FCKs, but I thought that was a little crude. So if that helps you remember it, But the KFCs are to keep your emotions in check, to focus on your shared goals, and to communicate professionally. You know how to do that in your business life. You need to do that in your co-parenting life. And if there's so much conflict, there are other options. There's parallel parenting, which is beyond the scope of what I'm talking about today. But you need to figure out how you could work together on the joint venture of your kids, and really reframing it and reinventing that relationship as a business relationship can be such a powerful paradigm shift for you in your head. The fourth step in the Protect system is to transform your parenting. And that's something that you alone have the power to do. Yeah, your ex is making mistakes. Yeah, they're doing stupid things, but you have two options. One is you lower yourself to their level because you think that's the best way of protecting yourself, or you rise above that and you do things better. And there's a document called the Bill of Rights for Children of Divorce that lays out 15 rights that kids have. The right not to be used as messengers, the right not to be secret keepers, the right not to be forced to choose, the right to have peaceful transitions, the right to have as much consistency between homes as possible. Following that Bill of Rights is going to go so far to protecting your kids, to not make those parenting mistakes that you might not even know that you're making. So becoming aware of the damaging things that you could do, and every day proclaiming your power to do them, not waiting for your ex to get better at their behavior, but you being the role model of the appropriate parent. Because I always say to people, one is better than none. One of you doing this is better than neither of you doing this. So the fifth step is to erase the temptation to resolve issues in court. I have seen so many parents who are so badly hurt, so badly emotionally damaged, that they become driven by the desire to hurt their ex or their soon-to-be ex as badly as they were hurt. And they often use the court system as a way to do that. I'm going to find the biggest cutthroat attorney that I possibly can to screw you, to do everything that I can to hurt you. And I want to tell you that there is such a huge cost to be paid for that, emotionally as well as financially. Because when you go to court to resolve every single dispute, all it's going to do is further damage your relationship, because the goal is to prove what a horrible parent the other person is. And you're going to make all kinds of accusations and allegations and make them look out to be the most horrible parent that there is. And you know what? Clearly, let me say this 100%. There are some times that you have to go to court in cases of abuse or substance abuse or mental illness. But 90% of divorces don't have to be resolved in court. And it's going to spare you years of angst. And trust me, it's going to spare your kids, because they will know about what's going on in court. They will have to make a choice when they sit with a law guardian. Who do you want to live with? That's the most horrible choice. I had to, decide if I should let my dad into the house to use the bathroom. Could you imagine having to decide who you want to live with and knowing that that's going to be what the court listens to? So staying out of court whenever possible, not only for actually resolving your divorce, but every dispute that happens going forward. So Tanya, if you could go to the next slide, we're going to now move on to the relationship with your kids. And the step number 6 in the Protect pathway is to create strategic coping mechanisms for your children. It's so important that you understand several things about how your kids are going to cope. It's actually the next one, Tanya. So there are developmental differences in terms of how children react to divorce. And let me give you an example. A 7-year-old tends to look at the world totally from their perspective. So when you tell a 7-year-old that you're getting divorced, their first reaction is going to be, I know I'd cause this. I know because I had a fight with my brother and you got mad at me. That's why you're getting divorced. You need to know that. So when you talk to your children about the divorce, you can say to them, that to your 7-year-old, you are not responsible for this. This was not your fault. You did nothing. You are not to blame. So understanding the developmental perspective of where your kids are coming from is so important. And it's also so important to understand what a normal stress reaction is for your child and what a more problematic one is, so that you could get them the help that they need if they're really struggling. I had these problems, and again, I mentioned my parents dragged me to doctors, but they never said, we're going through a divorce. This is a horrible time. Erica's probably struggling because of that. Parents need to know what is a normal reaction and what's not a normal reaction, so they could get their child the help that they need. And finally, the T in the protect system is to thrive in the new normal. You need to help your kids as well as yourself to grieve for what you've lost, and then start to embrace the new reality and create the new traditions and help them move forward in a positive way with 2 new reconfigured families. This family is not gone. It's just different. It looks different. And you need to support that. You need to support your kids' relationship with their other parent. You need to not make them feel guilty when they want to spend time with them. So this protect system works you through 7 steps, going through the 3 relationships with yourself, with your spouse, with your kids. And it allows you to go through a comprehensive strategic model of how to do that. And I've created a program that gives you every bit of information and knowledge and skill about how to do that. And I call it the 30-day divorce triage. And I will walk you through all of these 7 steps through 11 on-demand sessions that detail everything you need to know to work your way through this protect system. I teach you what to do, what to say, and what not to do and what not to say, so you don't make the mistakes that my parents made. And, basically, I try to educate you about things that you shouldn't be getting educated about in your attorney's office. They're not experts about child development. They're not experts about emotional problems in kids. They're not experts in relationships. So don't waste your money talking to your attorney about those things. This is a place that you could learn those skills from somebody who not only has lived it, but has 30 years of professional experience helping people do this work. So this is my passion. This is what I have taken from my divorce journey. And I have devoted my career as a clinician, as an author, as the creator of the child-centered divorce journey, to do everything that I can to help kids not to have to go through what I went through, because I know it's possible. They don't have to. It is very possible for them to come out of the other end of this divorce happy, healthy, well-adjusted, with a relationship with both of you. And honestly, that's my goal. That's my passion. That's what the child-centered divorce journey is all about. And that's what I most want you to take away today, that there's hope, and you don't have to leave this to chance, because there are specific, strategic, systematic things that you could do to spare your children the emotional damage that I experienced as a kid, and so many of my patients have as well.
So Dr. Erica, thank you. This has been phenomenal. We need to have information like this in these discussions. There's a comment that's in the chat that says, not making your children feel guilty when decisions are or are not made is so important.
And sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, right? We don't even know.
So we do have a question from the group, and it's asking, should you stay in a marriage for your children?
Well, I actually feel really strongly about that. I think kids are better off in a healthy separated family than in an unhealthy together family. When kids grow up in constant conflict, in constant turmoil, it's just trauma over and over and over again. So I don't believe in the concept of staying together for the sake of the children. I think that they get damaged by staying in unhealthy relationships, and they never learn what a healthy relationship should look like. So, some people, I guess, are able to fake it for till their kids leave the house. If there's some way you're able to, stay together and have it be a peaceful, amicable kind of situation, maybe that's doable. But that's not what most people are able to do. So no, I don't really believe in that concept.
Thank you for sharing that. And you all need to really join Zoom when we have these sessions. There is comments and discussions happening in the chat box. I'm glad that there's some feedback that's happening online, but this is where we can actually come face to face and have the conversation while we have Dr. Erica here. But there is another comment that's in the group that I want to ask. It says, long and short story of it, how do you console a 7-year-old who's grieving the loss of their father? They're going through divorce. You're already aware that the child typically stays with one parent more than the other, but that child knows that this is not the way it was. How do you help them work through that grief?
Well, I think the most important thing that you could do is provide frequent opportunities for your kids to be able to talk about how they're feeling. Pushing stuff aside never works. Pushing through never works. So there's a grieving process. In the same way that you've gone through a grieving process, letting go of all your hopes and dreams that you had for your marriage, your kids have to go through a grieving process as well. So give them those opportunities, give them that space, ask them open-ended questions. How are you doing with this? I know it's hard not being with your dad every day. What's that like for you? Give them a place to talk and just be there to listen and be supportive. And here's the 7-year-old. I remind you, your 7-year-old may be feeling responsible. So reassure them it wasn't their fault. They didn't do anything to cause this. But give them opportunities every chance you can to be able to talk about and express how they're feeling. And they'll go through the grieving process just like you will. And we all get to the other side of that. It takes time, but it also sometimes takes work.
Thank you for that. One other question in the group. When you go through a divorce, you can end up with a financial breakdown. I know for me personally, I was left with $35,000 worth of debt in the aftermath of my divorce. My children had to be transitioned to a different home because I couldn't afford it. There were things that just was happening that I was stuck financially by myself. I eventually learned how to get it together. So for the parents that are trying to figure it out, even with me trying to figure it out, it took me 2 years to clean up that $35,000 worth of debt and move my kids into a new environment. But when I moved them, it was not the neighborhood they were used to. They had to change schools, be introduced to a whole new set of individuals. And I moved a little bit closer to other family members and down the street from their grandmother, because I knew that's where their father would eventually end up, which happened. Because he kept lying to our children about, I can't get there because your mama, this, that, and the other. What do you have to say? Because this person is going through that same thing. She had to move. She's trying to help her children through the transition. What does that look like for them? And what advice can you give them having walked through the childhood experience?
Well, I think it's so important to acknowledge how hard it is. It's important to help them have reasonable expectations that things may be different. We might not have as much money as we had before. We might need to be making different choices. I think one of the most important things to do is to not badmouth your spouse for causing this to your kids. To say, if it wasn't for your, deadbeat dad, we wouldn't have to be doing this. You don't want to be bad-mouthing another parent to your children. I think if there are reality factors that are going to come into play, which for many people there are, divorce has a huge financial impact on families. You're going to need to sit your kids down and explain that to them in a way that they could understand given their age. And you're going to have to help them with all of those challenges. And again, I believe so firmly in keeping the communication open and being able to talk about the struggles and the challenges. So, setting expectations, helping them understand the new realities, but not blaming the other spouse, because the goal is to help your kids maintain a relationship with the other parent, not to do anything to put them in the position of feeling like they have to choose between the two of you.
Thank you so much for that. In the chat we have, and if you feel you are unable to do that for them, allow a therapist in to help. And this person on the chat box said they're so glad they did. So I'm glad that you are here to share that as well. And for those of you that are here, let me know when you're ready. You can unmute yourselves and you can come online so that we can see you and have this interactive conversation. I do have one other question.
Could I just respond to that and add one more piece to that?
Yes.
That is such an excellent point. And sometimes it's really hard for kids to talk about things with their parents in the midst of the divorce because they don't want to burden the parent. They don't want to upset them. They don't want to give them one more thing to worry about. So as a therapist myself, this is a great time to find somebody for your kid to talk to, who they could trust and they could go to with these situations, so they're not feeling like they're burdening their parents. Obviously, I believe in therapy 1000%. And I think, finding somebody who has experience working with kids and kids of divorce can be an incredibly valuable resource for your children during this time.
Thank you. That is good. And I'm glad you stepped in with that. We have one last question. And then those of you that are there, thank you for sending your questions in, but continue. We have a few more moments that we can still have a conversation with Dr. Erica, so take advantage of this time. And if you have questions that you want to ask once we are done, she's going to leave us her information so that you can get in touch with her, and she has a special gift she'll talk about later to let you know how you can be helped through this time. And this particular question was asking, for those that are now in a relationship with someone else whose ex still has to do the schedule type thing, how did you work with how the children, what do you suggest? Hold up, let me go back and look at this.
Okay.
What do you suggest you do with providing the schedule and supporting your children through that when you are in a new relationship and your ex is still doing whatever they were doing, but your children feel stuck in the middle?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in that, right? So, I mean, I'll throw in a little something about new relationships. I think you need to go slowly with introducing people into your kids' lives. Give them time to get to know them. Don't push this person on them. And really, more importantly, give your children time still with you. Don't have every time that you're with your kids be with this new person. I think it's so important to maintain the time with you so they don't end up resenting this new person and fearing that somehow they're going to be taking you away from them. So, the new parent might be struggling with this, and that, often is the case. I often say to people, give your ex an opportunity to meet this person. Give them what you would probably want, right? Is an opportunity to know who's going to be spending time with their kids. Let them know ahead of time. Do the things that you think would be helpful for you if you were the one. Give them that same respect. But your kids needs to still spend time with each of you, and then slowly introduce this new person into their lives and give them an opportunity to do it a little bit at a time. I hope that answered your question.
I hope it answers their question as well. We will soon find out if there are other questions. So before we start wrapping up, If there are no other questions, I don't see anything else that's happening on this side. Are there any comments, questions, or thoughts for those that are here on Zoom? You can unmute yourself and come online. Okay. Well, hearing and seeing none, let us know how we can stay in touch with you. I'm going to share the slide that you gave me for your information so that people can see that.
Okay. So my website is called the Child-Centered Divorce Journey. And you could go to the website for information. You could email me at erica@childcentereddivorcejourney.com. You could go to Amazon and check out my book, Your Healthy Divorce Journey. Excuse me. You can go to CCDJ, as in Child-Centered Divorce Journey, starterkit.com, and get a free starter kit about the 7-step Protect system. Or if you're interested in the 30-day triage, you could go to 30daydivorcetriage.com. So there's so many ways that you could reach me. And I encourage you, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if I could be helpful in some way, please reach out to me, because like I said, this is what I'm devoted to do, to help parents like you to protect their kids. And if there's anything I could do to help you, I want to be there as your partner in this.
Thank you, Dr. Erica. We appreciate you coming and giving us this information, gaining some insight about how we can be a better protect system for our kids. You talked about several points. The one that I know that I have to pay attention to and often ask others when I work with them as well, to keep your emotions in check, the KFCs. I love the acronym. It helps keep some thoughts about what that is, and it makes it simple for people to just use that as a touch point. So for those of you that will be asking questions later, you can send your questions, because not everyone that is watching this information is inside of the group that we set this up for. There is a group that we work with for those that are dealing with life after divorce. Just inbox me. You can go to my website, tanyaehood.com. Contact me to leave your questions. I will share them with Dr. Erica. You have her information directly that she just shared. Send her your questions so that she can give you extra support along the way, because she has her Protect program that she's talked about to let you know. She can only give a high-level conversation about what she provides, but I know when you get into the discussion with her, because this is what she does, you'll gain a whole lot more information. Whenever you all are looking for support, reach out, just like she shared. Find someone that does it. And now, for those of you that are going through divorce with children, you now have someone that you can reach out to, that you know has a heart to serve you and your children, to help you both get to your best possible position. I'm going to also share her free gift with you all. This information is also being shared on YouTube, so you all will get the chance to get the link to reach her, to get the free information. And again, Dr. Erica, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
This time. And thank you all that are here on Zoom. Look at you guys. I appreciate you being here. This is how we heal, and this is how we grow. So if there are no other comments, questions, or thoughts, I'll start to close this session out. Hey, Jocelyn. Thank you. Any comments, questions, or thoughts?
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And so with that, let me start wrapping up this discussion. I know that this is going to take you to your next trajectory. And I invite you to join me on other elements outside of a conversation with children. You see, Dr. Erica is the person to contact related to that. But for me, I can help you navigate the hurdles of life after divorce. There's a course that I share that gives you more insight and clarity about who you are, to build a firmer foundation by getting to know yourself, guarding your heart, and tearing down the walls to get your breakthrough. I'm having this session take place October 6th through the 7th. It's a 2-day event that starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's an online event, free to those that want to come. Go to my website, tanyaehood.com, so that you can get that information, so that you can have some support on the journey. I know what it is like. I've been there, having gone through the traumas and the woes of raising my two sons, but I have navigated the landmines, and I want to help you do the same. So thank you for joining us on this session of Red Alert Diaries with Dr. Erica Ellis. And we look forward to you joining us in so many other ways. This is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.